After 3 years abroad, her spouse came back, accompanied by his lover and their young boy. Calmly, she presented him with the divorce documents and departed, clutching her hidden wealth. For those endless 3 years of anticipation, Aaliyah Thurston had trusted that Darius Sterling would reappear triumphant. Yet on the day Darius showed up, he ushered his paramour and offspring into the residence they'd once envisioned building side by side. Tears didn't well up in her eyes. She refrained from shouting or pointing fingers. Instead, she merely set down the executed divorce filing alongside the property title on the polished mahogany table in the living room. Nobody realized that this lady, frequently belittled by elite circles as nothing more than a pampered spouse, actually spearheaded the enigmatic Phoenix Thread, a prestigious label in upscale couture. Her assets held the power to rattle the foundations of New York City itself. The evening of his disloyalty marked her renewal, as she shed the old life with a composed grin and a prosperity that would soon captivate the globe. Aaliyah glanced at the clock on the wall. Evening had arrived at 7 The savory scent of braised short ribs in a Merlot sauce, Darius's go-to dish, wafted through their lavish Midtown Manhattan residence. A steaming pot of gumbo sat on the dinner table, ideally paired with sautéed collard greens and smoked turkey, arranged with precision. It was all flawless, mirroring the devotion she'd nurtured over the years. 3 years, 1,095 days. That's the span since Darius headed to Chicago for what he dubbed the venture of a lifetime. For 195 solitary evenings, she'd lingered in that vast space, awaiting his brief calls. He'd vowed this endeavor would catapult him to elite status as the top architect in the Northeast, granting her an existence of effortless luxury. She'd taken him at his word, just as she'd always upheld faith in their bond from their time at Howard University. She stood and approached the expansive window, staring out at the hectic flow of vehicles on Park Avenue. The glow of neon signs danced across her refined features, revealing faint traces of weariness from the prolonged vigil, yet unable to conceal her inherent gentleness. During those 3 years, she'd adapted to handling it all by herself, fixing dripping taps, swapping out bulbs, even visiting the ER solo during bouts of sickness. She'd evolved from a protected girl into a fiercely self-reliant force. Still, at her core, she longed for the comfort of his arms around her. Today marked his return. Just a week prior, he'd phoned her, his voice unusually upbeat, declaring the initiative a major triumph, with a promotion and reassignment to headquarters. "I'm heading home." Those straightforward words had stirred her deeply. Over the past 7 days, she'd scrubbed the place spotless, laundered every sheet by hand, and devoted the afternoon to crafting his beloved recipes. The chime of the doorbell shattered her reverie. Her pulse quickened. It was Darius. She inhaled steadily, striving to steady the surge of feelings, and rushed toward the entrance. She aimed to welcome him with her brightest beam and the tenderest embrace. As the door swung open, Darius appeared, his stature imposing, his sharp-featured visage appearing more mature and accomplished than before, clad in a costly tailored suit. But his expression toward her felt odd, shifty. Aaliyah's focus shifted quickly from him, drawn instead to the figure trailing close, a woman with an oval visage and wide, expressive eyes, appearing vulnerable and forlorn. She was dressed in a spotless white gown. What truly stunned Aaliyah into stillness was the toddler cradled in the woman's hold. The child, roughly 2 years old, slumbered peacefully, his traits strikingly mirroring Darius's own. Moments halted. The cozy vibe of the household chilled abruptly. Even the enticing fragrance of the meal failed to conceal the foul odor of treachery now thick in the atmosphere. Darius coughed to shatter the heavy quiet. He entered the flat without locking eyes with her. "Aaliyah, meet Simone Hargrove, and this is Malik. My boy." Aaliyah remained silent. "Aaliyah." Her stare moved from the unfamiliar woman's countenance to the dozing infant. My boy. Those 4 syllables struck like blades carving into her chest. 3 years of patience traded for a rival partner and a concealed offspring. Simone bowed her head, her tone quivering with apparent remorse. Mrs. Sterling, I truly regret this. I never meant to shatter your marriage. Darius scowled and drew Simone sheltering behind him. No need for apologies. It's on me, Aaliyah. I realize this hits hard out of nowhere, but Simone gave so much for me during those 3 years in Chicago. She's the one who got my ambitions and stood by them, and the kid deserves acknowledgement. They'll stay here moving forward. I trust you can wrap your head around it. He dove into an extended monologue, each phrase justifying his actions while utterly ignoring her devotion. He anticipated tears, a dramatic outburst, jealousy like that of most women. Yet Aaliyah showed none of it. Her poise unsettled Darius deeply. No weeping, no accusations flowed from her. Instead, she regarded him quietly, her eyes profound and tranquil like a fall pond. That stare stirred remorse in Darius, while Simone instinctively clutched the baby closer without thinking. Aaliyah then pivoted deliberately and moved toward the bedroom. Darius and Simone shared a look, a brief spark of victory blended with contempt in their gazes. They assumed she had resigned to her destiny, figuring an idle homemaker had little option but to suffer through it. How mistaken they were. Moments afterward, Aaliyah reappeared. She held not a blade or luggage, but a dark blue dossier. She approached the low table and set it down with care. Her tone, crisp and icy, cut through the quiet. Here's the divorce filing. I've already put my signature on it. She fixed her eyes on Darius's astonished expression before delivering one last phrase, each word deliberate and sharp. Sign it and leave my home. The room fell utterly still. Darius gaped at the dossier on the table, then at Aaliyah's impassive features, as though struggling to grasp what he just heard. Leave my home. Fury surged in place of his first astonishment. His sense of male ego felt crushed. Aaliyah, what kind of trick is this? He barked, his voice laced with fury and scorn. Who are you to throw me out? Just look in the mirror. You've wasted 3 years lounging at home, idle. Every item here, from the tiniest ornament to this sofa, this opulent existence, it's all from my sweat and toil. Divorce, how will you even survive? His barb struck at Aaliyah's recollections, forcing her to revisit scenes from before. That afternoon beneath the campus oaks at university, a youthful Darius in his crisp white shirt had clasped her hand, his eyes alight with ambition, whispering, Aaliyah, one day I'll rise as a top architect. I'll construct the grandest home for you, and we'll share a joyful life together. Back then, Aaliyah shone as the standout in fashion design. Her designs left instructors amazed. Her career path looked bright. Leading ateliers vied for her talents prior to her diploma. Yet for Darius's vow, for the passion she harbored, she abandoned it all. She rejected alluring proposals and stepped aside, offering him steadfast backing so he could chase his ambitions. She trusted her yielding made sense. When he landed the job in Chicago, he enveloped her in an embrace and vowed, hold on for just 3 years, no more. Once I'm home, I'll repay every bit. In year 1, he rang every day, sharing tales of the strains and stresses in a fresh city. She absorbed it all with patience, soothing and motivating him. Year 2 brought calls down to a handful weekly. He blamed endless work, late-night sessions, not wishing to disturb her sleep. Rather, he dispatched lavish presents, high-end purses, sparkling gems. But Aaliyah left them untouched. She craved his presence, not soulless items. By the 3rd year, phone chats numbered scarce, filled with shallow inquiries. His tone drifted further away each time. Her instincts as a woman signaled trouble. She'd convinced herself it was mere career immersion. Still, A fissure had started forming inside her soul. She'd pondered the direst outcomes, and that divorce document marked her readiness for now. What caught her off guard was its arrival so raw and unmasked. The flood of flashbacks ceased. Aaliyah snapped back to the present and eyed the figure across from her, the one she'd once adored completely. Her stare held no ache anymore, just a subtle mockery. She skipped debating finances with him. Talk felt pointless. Quietly, she glided to a timber cabinet in the room's edge. She pulled open a compartment and drew out yet another safeguarded dossier. Back she came, laying it atop the divorce papers. "You're correct," she stated evenly. "All of it in this place was purchased with funds, though none from you." Darius's brow furrowed in bewilderment. "What rubbish is this?" Aaliyah offered no reply. With her elegant, extended digit, she slid the dossier his way. "Take a peek inside." Wary yet intrigued, Darius grasped it. Within lay a faintly aged paper. Spotting the title, his eyes narrowed sharply. It proved to be the ownership certificate. The listed spot matched this very unit on Park Avenue, but the real shock hit when he saw the proprietor. Just one name stood bold, Aaliyah Thurston, and tucked in the lower edge, the filing date, June 15th, 7 years prior, right before their wedding. Darius went rigid as stone. This residence, which he'd long boasted as his achievement, the spot he flaunted to his the friends, the very basis of his insistence on her obedience, had actually belonged to her long before their wedding. In the eyes of the law, it counted as her personal belonging. He held no claim over it whatsoever. He jerked his head up, fixing her with a stare of utter incredulity. Every trace of his smugness, fury, and smug triumph evaporated from his expression, replaced by sheer confusion and total astonishment. He parted his lips as if to speak, yet an unseen grip seemed to choke his voice box. Not a syllable escaped him. A profound hush enveloped the room. The document rested on the table like a quiet indictment of Darius's hubris. His complexion shifted from pale to sickly pallor. Bewilderment and mortification shone clearly in his gaze. Right then, Simone, who had lingered quietly at Darius's side, suddenly dissolved into sobs. Streams of tears traced paths down her face. Her pitiful whimpers shattered the strained quiet. She advanced a step, eyeing Aaliyah through brimming eyes. "Mrs. Thurston, I realize this mess is entirely on me. I'm not seeking your pardon, and I have no desire to shatter your home. All I want is, I just wish for my boy Malik. He's blameless in this. He requires his dad. We're merely requesting a modest spot in this home to raise him. I seek no formal status. Please show pity for the little one." The act was flawless. Each phrase, each motion radiated a deliberate fragility, positioning her as the ultimate sufferer. Darius, snapping out of his daze, seized Simone's theatrics as a chance to collect himself and vent his wrath. He shoved her roughly out of the way and bellowed at Aaliyah in a domineering tone. "Aaliyah, how can you be so heartless? Look at Simone. She's showing real humility. She's only pleading for a corner for our child. Must you act so mercilessly? Don't imagine that owning this flat gives you total control. Once we're split, what will sustain you? A jobless woman who spent years just handling chores and meals. Do you believe the world outside is forgiving? Without my support, you couldn't afford even basic daily eats." His bruised ego fueled ever more cutting remarks. He'd erased their shared history from his mind. What lingered was pure disdain for the partner he viewed as reliant on him. Aaliyah felt no rage, only amusement at the absurdity. Gradually, she raised her eyes. Her piercing stare glided across Darius's outraged features and halted on the hypocritical Simone. Silently, she pivoted and headed to the bedroom they once occupied together. Darius assumed his barbs had wounded her deeply, driving her to tears. A chilly smirk curled his mouth, but he erred once more. Aaliyah flung open the expansive wardrobe and gestured to the left section, where a handful of her outfits dangled. They featured muted shades, basic cuts, everyday materials. A few appeared threadbare. Their combined worth might not match a single extravagant meal Darius enjoyed at an upscale eatery. Then, with sudden force, she revealed the right half. An entirely contrasting realm unfolded. Rows of high-end tailored jackets, crisp blouses ironed to perfection, silk neckties arranged with precision in a rainbow of hues. At the base, polished hides of footwear gleamed, alongside a case of rare edition timepieces that caught the light. His whole collection screamed opulence and extravagance. Aaliyah spun back, locking eyes with him squarely. Her tone stayed even, yet each syllable struck like a heavy thud against his ribs. Darius, over these 3 years, beyond the routine monthly allowance for household needs that you provided, I've not touched a dime of yours for personal use. Examine my wardrobe. Spot anything worthwhile. And yours. These jackets, those timepieces. Who funded them using your funds? I may lack the authority to question it, but on what grounds do you presume to school me on money matters? Her statement rendered him mute, his features flushed with fury and embarrassment. The facts checked out. He'd wired her a standard sum, just sufficient for utilities and simple groceries. In contrast, he'd lavished cash on indulgences to project his status as a thriving designer. It had never crossed his mind that Aaliyah might catch on. At that instant, his mobile buzzed. He snatched it like a rescue rope. It was his mom, Mrs. Sterling. Upon picking up, her piercing screech filled the line. Darius, my boy, word is you're home, and that Aaliyah's complicating everything. Darling, it's typical for guys to stray now and then. As his spouse, she ought to show some tolerance for the greater good. Assure her that if she plays nice, the Sterling clan will look after her. Remember, that kid's my blood. Before he could interject, Aaliyah wrested the device from his grasp. She pressed it to her ear. Her reply came cool as frost. Mrs. Sterling, rest easy. I require neither your treasured boy nor your grandchild. We'll sort our matters on our own. With that, ignoring any comeback, she ended the call sharply. She flung the phone toward him. Her look held not a flicker of warmth anymore. The air in the flat thickened, turning stifling. The intervention from his mother proved the breaking point for Aaliyah's endurance. She refused to linger another moment in that space with those individuals. She retrieved her own phone and punched in a well-known number. Phone number, Camille Dixon, attorney at law. Hello, Camille. It's Aaliyah Thurston here. Aaliyah stated succinctly, her voice steady and unyielding. Forward the divorce filing to Darius Sterling right away. Start the legal process without delay. Got it, came the response from the line. The conversation wrapped up abruptly. Aaliyah slipped her phone into her pocket and, ignoring the two frozen individuals in the living area, headed directly to the bedroom. The noise of a luggage case unzipping and cabinets shutting echoed through the space. Darius and Simone exchanged glances. Simone, her face etched with concern, pulled lightly at Darius's arm. Darius, what's her next move? She's just putting on an act, Darius dismissed with a snort, his assurance returning. What more can she possibly do? It's all empty threats. I doubt she'll really walk out. And if she does, where to? A buddy's couch or back to her podunk hometown. A lady used to the high life will crawl back after a few rough days on her own. Simone took solace in his reasoning, her eyes on the bedroom door sparkling with a mix of satisfaction and contempt. Exactly. A homemaker for all these years, no cash or influence. How long can she keep up that bold front? Shortly after, Aaliyah reappeared, towing a compact suitcase. It was a 20-inch carry-on, appearing quite lightweight. She'd swapped her outfit for plain denim pants and a plain white tee, her lengthy locks tied into a simple tail. She resembled not a spouse freshly scorned, but rather a young scholar gearing up for a brief getaway. She claimed none of Darius's belongings, skipping the lavish baubles he'd gifted. She took solely her own possessions. Wheeling the bag toward the exit without a backward glance, she passed it by. The lavish meal remained steaming on the dining surface. Yet to her, it now served as a cruel jest. As her fingers gripped the doorknob, Darius spoke in a condescending tone. "Give it some thought. Once your fit passes and you regain clarity, return. I'll offer you another opportunity." Aaliyah offered no words. A faint, barely noticeable curve touched her mouth. An opportunity. He failed to grasp that it was he who required one, not her. Click, the door shut, dividing their existences. Within, Darius and Simone shared a grin, convinced the spectacle had concluded, and victory was theirs. Beyond, Aaliyah stood tall in the lift, showing no trace of doubt. Upon hitting the lobby, she exited the upscale high-rise she'd called home for years. The evening breeze from New York carried a subtle coolness. She skipped calling a taxi or aiming for the transit hub. Instead, she lingered quietly at the curb. Within moments, a sleek black Bentley arrived soundlessly before her. The back passenger side swung open, and a driver in a flawless suit emerged, offering a polite bow. "Miss Aaliyah, if you would step inside." He relieved her of the petite bag and stowed it securely in the rear storage. Aaliyah remained silent, merely giving a small nod before easing into the opulent rear compartment. The door latched gently, shielding her from the bustling streets. The vehicle moved smoothly, blending into the heavy flow of cars. It veered away from downtown or humble suburbs, instead navigating a leafy avenue toward Greenwich Village, the priciest enclave in the city where land fetched fortunes per inch. At last, it halted at the entrance to a grand old-world estate. The ornate wrought iron barrier parted on its own, granting access to a pristine garden enclosure. Aaliyah alighted and inhaled the crisp atmosphere deeply. Here lay her real sanctuary. The sturdy timber entrance of the estate swung wide. A seasoned caretaker stood ready to greet her. "Welcome back, miss," she murmured warmly. This abode belonged not just to Aaliyah Thurston, but to her studio as well, the haven where invaluable masterpieces emerged, the hidden domain of the brand that sent ripples through the realms of couture and creativity. Phoenix Thread. 3 days following Aaliyah's departure, an official packet arrived at Darius's door from the court. He tore it open carelessly, skimmed the notice and the formal separation request from the council, and a derisive smirk crossed his face. He'd figured her outburst was temporary, that a bit of struggle would bring her slinking home. He hadn't anticipated her pushing it this far by involving legal help. Big deal. A longtime domestic partner sans earnings. How could she challenge him? He'd toss her a modest payout out of pity and wrap it up fast. Embracing that haughty mindset, Darius dialed his attorney, a divorce expert named Mr. Williams, and assuredly shared that he'd show for the initial session to uncover whatever schemes his soon-to-be ex might devise. The firm of Camille Dixon occupied the 35th level of a towering skyscraper. Nestled amid the bustling core of the financial hub stood a sleek office building. Its polished panes and understated yet opulent decor radiated an aura of sophistication and elite access. Darius stepped inside alongside his attorney. The evident extravagance only solidified his conviction that Aaliyah had simply taken a loan to maintain appearances. Inside the conference area, a professional woman in her upper 30s was already seated, awaiting their arrival. Dressed in a flawlessly fitted gray trouser ensemble, with her locks neatly tied in a chignon, subtle cosmetics, and a piercing stare, she embodied precision. This was Camille Dixon, the legal representative for Aaliyah Thurston. Camille offered a polite inclination of her head. She gestured for them to take seats with no further preamble. The attorney, Mr. Williams, opened the discussion in a mildly patronizing manner. "Ms. Dixon, we've reviewed the filing from Mrs. Thurston. My client, Mr. Sterling, cherishes personal connections deeply. He's keen to avoid any nastiness. As for splitting the property, we're both aware that Mrs. Thurston hasn't held employment for quite some time, relying entirely on Mr. Sterling for her livelihood. Out of respect for their shared history, Mr. Sterling is prepared to offer a generous alimony arrangement, enough for her to secure housing and pursue fresh employment opportunities. Camille Dixon absorbed his words quietly, her slender fingers tapping rhythmically against the surface. Once Mr. Williams concluded, she responded with composed assurance. Mr. Williams, it seems there's been some confusion. My client, Mrs. Thurston, isn't seeking alimony from Mr. Sterling in any form. Williams and Darius shared a glance laced with astonishment and disdain. No financial aid at all. Did she intend to depart with nothing? Camille pressed on steadily. Our requests are straightforward. To begin with, we seek an expedited dissolution of the marriage, grounded in the undeniable proof of Mr. Sterling's infidelity. She nudged a dossier containing images across to them. The snapshots captured Darius and Simone in compromising embraces in Chicago. Some even depicted the pair alongside young Malik, coming and going from an upscale residential tower. Darius's expression shifted subtly. He hadn't anticipated Aaliyah possessing such material. Next, Camille proceeded on the matter of possessions. The residence on Park Avenue qualifies as my client's separate property, obtained prior to their union, leaving no room for negotiation. That said, earnings accrued by Mr. Sterling throughout the marriage count as joint assets. We insist on a fair allocation as mandated by statute. Mr. Williams emitted a brief chuckle. Ms. Dixon, surely you're not serious? While Mr. Sterling's earnings do indeed form part of the marital estate, Mrs. Thurston has subsisted on those funds for years. A 50-50 split would leave her with scant resources. Mrs. Thurston ought to temper her expectations. Opting for alimony would serve her interests far better. Darius reclined in his seat, arms folded, a smug look etched on his face. He observed Camille with detached entertainment, eager to witness how she'd sustain this pretense. Camille remained unfazed. She met Mr. Williams's eyes squarely, a faint curve touching her mouth. Very well then, let's address reality. She reached into the satchel at her side, retrieving a heftier binder than the photo collection. With care, she set it down and slid it Darius's way. Mr. Sterling, you assert that my client relied on you entirely for her upkeep. Is that right? Kindly examine this. Darius's brow furrowed as he grasped the binder out of intrigue. The opening sheet displayed a banking summary. His gaze raced over the amounts, halting at the closing total. The figure wasn't lengthy, yet it caused his eyes to widen sharply. Followed by 8 zeros, he flipped onward hastily. Another institution's record, revealing yet another staggering sum. Page after page unfolded under his scrutiny. His grip started to shake. Charges on cards, holdings in bonds, shares in equities. Each document landed like a blow. Yet it went further. Appended were titles to real estate, a row house in Soho, retail premises on Rodeo Drive, a sprawling property in the Hamptons, all registered under Aaliyah Thurston's ownership. The ultimate revelation that shattered him entirely involved business stakes. Aaliyah Thurston controlled 70% of an entity named Phoenix Thread. Phoenix Thread, that rang a bell. He'd overheard associates' spouses reference it. A premier label in couture, famed for exorbitantly priced elusive artisanal silk embroidery pieces. An emblem of elite circles. The chamber plunged into utter quiet. Mr. Williams at his side stood frozen, jaw slackened. Darius sensed a chill coursing through his bloodstream. His breaths grew ragged. He lifted his eyes to Camille, his stare blending disbelief, confusion, fury, and an underlying profound dread. The partner he'd long dismissed as mere homemaker, whom he deemed incapable of independence, proved to be a covert tycoon. The revelation struck so abruptly, so relentlessly, that it left him utterly unprepared. As Darius grappled with this mental upheaval in the legal suite, Aaliyah inhabited an entirely separate realm. Her timeless estate in Greenwich Village transcended mere shelter. The second and third, the upper levels had evolved into a sophisticated atelier, showcasing impeccable artistry and skill. Gone was any hint of kitchen grease. Instead, a faint whiff of sandalwood mingled with the refined fragrance of premium silks. Sunlight poured in through expansive French-inspired panes, casting a glow on racks brimming with vibrant embroidery flosses that sparkled like a spectrum of hues. Aaliyah had shed her everyday homemaker attire for a chic silk gown in a hazy azure shade. The gentle material draped over her lithe yet shapely form. Her flowing locks were loosely secured with a simple wooden pin, revealing her poised and refined nape. Devoid of heavy cosmetics, she still projected an enchanting presence, a fusion of an artist's timeless poise and a commander's assured resolve. Positioned at a grand embroidery hoop, her fingers danced nimbly, directing the thread across a midnight silk canvas. Under her touch, a blazing phoenix began to emerge. Each plume appeared strikingly lifelike, glowing with a luminous gold. Her focus halted the world around her. A young aide, Maya, slipped in softly, clutching a tablet. "Aaliyah, apologies for interrupting, but we've just received a major partnership offer." Maya avoided titles like director or chief. In this space, everyone addressed her as Aaliyah, a warm yet respectful nod. Aaliyah paused her stitching, though her gaze stayed fixed on the piece. From who? The Sterling and Stone Empire? A powerhouse in upscale property and artistic ventures, Maya explained. Their head, Mr. Quincy Davis, holds Phoenix Threads creations in high regard. They're launching a fresh venue blending commerce and culture, dubbed the Pinnacle Art Center. They'd like to extend a direct invitation to Phoenix Threads' originator for partnering on a bespoke silk embroidery display in the entry hall. It would serve as the project's focal gem. The proposal carried immense significance. The Pinnacle Art Center was poised to emerge as New York's latest landmark. Featuring Phoenix Threads pieces in such a prime spot could propel the label to stardom. Aaliyah pondered briefly. Over the past 3 years, to nurture her modest household, she turned down numerous grand opportunities, taking solely discreet orders to sustain the workshop. She'd concealed herself under the Phoenix Thread banner for so long that her former bold dreams had nearly faded. Now, unencumbered and unbound, she felt ready. It might be the moment for Phoenix Thread to truly flourish. She faced Maya, her expression steady yet resolute. "Inform them we're open to discussing. Set up a session with their leader, Mr. Davis." Maya beamed and stepped out promptly to handle it. Aaliyah resumed at the hoop, her fingertips tracing the phoenix's magnificent plumes. The bird ascends from its ruins. Maybe that mirrored her own path. The collapse of her union hadn't crushed her. It had forged her into something tougher and more brilliant. Her eyes drifted to the vista of Manhattan's towering edifices. Her path forward, alongside Phoenix Threads, ignited precisely here, at this instant. Once Aaliyah departed, Simone Hargrove claimed the residence as the fresh mistress. She devoted her initial day scouring each space, methodically wiping away every remnant of the prior occupant. Out went the soft azure bedding Aaliyah cherished, swapped for a sultry crimson ensemble. The dainty balcony flora gave way to lavish rose arrangements. She even acquired pricey modernist canvases to adorn the walls, aiming to stamp her personal flair, a vibe distinctly Simone Hargrove's. Every alteration got snapped and shared on her Instagram, laced with sly undertones. Beside an image of an intimate meal by flickering candles, she captioned, "Joy can be elusive, but with the perfect match, every second of anticipation pays off." Under a shot of young Malik frolicking on the fresh couch, she noted, "My boy now enjoys a full family nest. Love turns any place into a haven." Each update acted as a stealthy barb, crafted to pierce Aaliyah's spirit. Simone pictured her rival huddled in some dingy leased flat, scrolling through these with anguish and envy tearing at her. She craved a retort, a bar back, or simply proof of torment. Yet disappointment followed. Aaliyah Thurston's account lay dormant. Her avatar stayed a pristine magnolia bloom. Her final update dated back 6 months. It was as if she'd vanished from the digital realm, brushing off Simone's jabs entirely. This quietude left Simone punching at shadows, like battering a yielding bolster. Infuriating. She couldn't fathom Aaliyah's composure. In the meantime, within the old college mates' WhatsApp chat, their saga had exploded into the buzz of everyone's chats. A buddy known as Lazy Kitten kicked things off. Folks, you catch that. Darius hauled his side chick and their kid back to the house. Aaliyah bolted. That poor soul, Aaliyah. All those years pouring her life into him, just to wind up dumped like yesterday's trash. Then someone, probably one of Darius's pals, leaped in to back him up. Love stuff gets messy. Darius spent 3 lonely years grinding away in Chicago. Any guy cut off from his spouse like that might slip up. It's human. But right away, another voice shot back. A slip-up that spits out a 2-year-old kid. Who the hell does he take Aaliyah for? The debate fired up fast. A few folks pitied Aaliyah. Others hinted she couldn't hold on to her man. A lady who's all too perfect and glued to the home front. She's just begging to get ditched. Check her out now. She's gotta be suffering big time. What era does she think this is? Leaning on some dude like that. Simone scrolled through all the remarks. She got a kick out of the ones trashing Aaliyah, but it boiled her blood that plenty still rooted for the woman. Even gone, Aaliyah cast a long shadow over Simone's world. She glanced at Darius, slumped on the couch with a scowl, and cooed sweetly, "Sweetie, why not ring her up and chat? Her quiet's got me uneasy." Yet Darius, fresh from the attorney's place, was in a foul temper. He shoved her hand off roughly. Uneasy about what? She's pulling the victim card, that's all. Quit fussing over her. Faced with his rare sharp edge, Simone bit her tongue and choked down the irritation. She had no clue that in Darius's thoughts, she and the little one meant squat anymore. His brain was totally fixated on Aaliyah Thurston's hidden massive wealth. To Simone, Aaliyah's hush felt like a slap of disdain. She missed how it was the ultimate strike. Once folks stop giving a damn, your jabs fall flat. Darius stormed out of the Park Avenue spot in total disarray. The figures from the reports, the spots of those swanky estates, and those 2 words, Phoenix Thread, swirled nonstop in his skull, whipping up unrelenting turmoil. Back at the flat, he barricaded himself in the study, tuning out Simone's anxious taps on the door. His gut punch wasn't regret, but raw rage. A con. The whole damn thing's a con, he fumed, pounding the desk. Aaliyah Thurston, the mild-mannered spouse he'd figured he could steer, had the nerve to fool him, stacking up a secret dynasty for years right under his nose. He came off like a fool, a sap played for laughs without a hint. His ego lay in ruins. But once the fury ebbed, bafflement hit hard. How in the world did she pull it off? Where'd the cash come from? Phoenix Thread. What's that about? Why keep it buried? He'd launched his own desperate probe. No way he'd grill his business contacts or loaded buddies. The shame burned too deep. Owning up that his wife, the one he bragged about carrying, outranked him in riches. No chance. Pure torture. He fell back on trusty old tricks. Flipping open his contacts, he dug up digits for long-lost college mates. Posing as if planning a class get-together, he eased into queries. First up, the old class head. After the usual chit-chat, he dropped it offhand. "Yo, you keeping tabs on Aaliyah Thurston? Lost touch with her." "Aaliyah." The guy paused. "But she's your wife, no?" "Spotted her last at that bash 5 years back. Still stunning, if a tad more reserved." "Oh yeah, hit me. You snatched the queen bee from our whole major." Darius's brow creased. "Queen bee, you forgetting." The class head chuckled. Who was Aaliyah Thurston in those days? The star talent of the fashion design crew. Her capstone piece snagged the National Design Award and got showcased at Chelsea Market. Big league companies scrapped to recruit her, dangling paychecks fresh grads could only fantasize about. Each line from his old pal hammered Darius's noggin. Bits came back fuzzy, but yeah, he recalled. She sketched like a pro, yet he'd glossed over prizes or gigs. Those days, he was buzzed on romance and swelled with smugness over landing such a stunner with skills. We figured she'd rocket to design fame, maybe global, the pal went on. Then boom, once she linked up with you, she ditched it all. Claimed she preferred homemaking to back you up. We all ached for her sake. Romance sure fogs the mind. When the call ended, Darius sat frozen in his seat. After ages, a twinge of remorse slithered into his chest. It clicked now. He pictured the glow in her gaze as she gushed over her creative visions. He saw her poise grabbing that trophy. He'd sworn to back he had stifled her spirit through his self-centered drive and relentless drive for success, slowly extinguishing her gifts and dreams. What was once a brilliant phoenix had been reduced to an ordinary bird trapped in a lavish enclosure of his own making. Yet that pang of remorse faded in mere moments, eclipsed by a more potent, shadowy force, avarice and jealousy. If her skills were truly exceptional, it made sense that she'd built that wealth on her own. But why keep it concealed? A spiteful idea took shape in his mind. She amassed that wealth while we were wed. Regardless of the means, by law, it counted as shared assets. She'd withheld details from him. She'd betrayed his trust. The blame rested squarely on her. Darius's outlook shifted entirely. He ceased being the disloyal spouse eager for a swift split to pursue his latest flame. Instead, he transformed into a ravenous predator, eyeing a tempting quarry. Thoughts of Simone and their boy receded into irrelevance. His only goal now was to claim a portion, or perhaps the whole, of Aaliyah Thurston's concealed domain. 1 month on, the Waldorf History Hotel in New York City shimmered beneath the evening glow. Sleek high-end vehicles lined up at the grand entrance. Reporters, prominent style influencers, and key players from the urban commerce and creative scenes had convened. Every eye was riveted on one highlight: the unveiling of Phoenix Thread's latest lineup, partnered with the Pinnacle Art Center initiative from the Sterling & Stone conglomerate. Up to this point, Phoenix Thread had lingered as an enigma. Its creations thrived without broad promotion, gaining renown through whispers in upscale circles like a guarded gem. Whispers suggested its creator excelled in silk stitching, though her features and real name remained unknown. This alliance with a powerhouse firm, coupled with their inaugural open showcase, had sent shockwaves through the sector. Back in the cramped flat, Darius slumped on the couch, his expression dour. Simone worked to soothe young Malik, whose wails persisted unabated. Tension hung heavy in the air. The separation dragged on far longer than Darius had anticipated. Aaliyah's attorney, Camille Dixon, proved unyielding, deploying proofs and reasoning that pinned his team in a corner. Probes into Aaliyah's holdings had hit a wall, too, impenetrably secured. In irritation, he switched on the TV and scanned the stations. Abruptly, he paused on a business broadcast, airing a style gala in real time. The banner headline snagged his focus: debut of the Phoenix Rising series from Phoenix Thread and the Sterling & Stone Group. Phoenix Thread. The phrase struck like a dagger to his rawest spot. He fixed his gaze on the display. The platform gleamed with elegance, the illumination enchanting. Runway figures strutted in striking ensembles featuring intricate manual needlework, highlighted by a blazing phoenix motif that appeared to flicker on ebony silk. It dawned on him that these weren't mere garments. They were masterpieces. The finale drew roaring cheers. The host stepped forward, his tone brimming with zeal. And now, esteemed guests, the highlight we've all awaited. Please greet the originator, the heart of Phoenix Thread, stepping into the spotlight for the very first time. Spotlight swiveled toward the stage's edge. Beams converged on a single area. Darius's pulse quickened oddly. Even he felt the intrigue. Who truly hid behind that veiled moniker? A graceful silhouette advanced from the shadows. As the glow bathed her, collective breaths caught in the hall. She donned a silvery white silk dress, accented by a magnolia sprig, crafted in luminous otherworldly threads. Her tresses were swept into an elegant updo, exposing a refined, composed visage that radiated an uncommon presence. No broad grin lit her features. A mere subtle tilt acknowledged the crowd, yet her gaze gleamed with assurance and dignity. Darius went rigid. The tumbler slipped from his grasp, crashing and splintering on the ground. The harsh clatter failed to snap him from his daze. Simone whirled in alarm, ready to chide, but words deserted her at the sight on the screen. The figure basking in acclaim, hailed as a visionary in design amid waves of praise, was Aaliyah Thurston. Far from the meek, unassuming partner they'd scorned, she embodied Phoenix Thread. In that instant, a refined, striking gentleman ascended the platform. Clad in a flawlessly fitted suit that conveyed poise and command, it was Quincy Davis, head of the Sterling and Stone conglomerate. He positioned himself next to Aaliyah, his glance conveying deep esteem and regard. Together, they formed a striking duo, a gifted creator alongside a corporate titan. They appeared uncannily well matched. The scene flickering across the TV felt like the keenest edge slicing through the final remnant. The remnants of his arrogance lingered only faintly in Darius as dawn broke. By morning, he steered his car toward the grand estate where Aaliyah resided. This visit carried none of the fury or disdain from before. Instead, exhaustion etched deep lines across his features. Sleepless nights had left his eyes rimmed in red. He'd crafted a fresh approach in his mind. Pressing the doorbell, he waited. The maid swung the door open, her stare icy and unwelcoming. "Apologies, sir. Miss Aaliyah isn't receiving visitors." With a desperate tone, Darius pleaded, "Please just inform Aaliyah that I recognize my errors. I've arrived to plead for her mercy. I'll remain right here until she agrees to see me." True to his word, he positioned himself by the entrance, enduring the rising heat of the sun. Deep down, he trusted that Aaliyah, for all her resolve, wouldn't abandon her ex-husband to the harsh weather. He misjudged her resolve entirely. Nearly 60 minutes passed before the sturdy metal barrier creaked apart. Yet it wasn't Aaliyah who emerged to face him. Rather, the maid, bearing a simple glass of water. She set it atop a stone column beside the entrance. "Miss Aaliyah instructs that if Mr. Sterling insists on lingering, he may do so, but she won't have him collapsing from the warmth right at her doorstep. That would inconvenience the neighbors." With those words, she pivoted and sealed the gate once more. Fury flushed Darius's cheeks a deep crimson. This slight cut deeper than any slur. Yet he reined in his temper. Force wouldn't serve him. Only strategy could. At last, around midday, Aaliyah consented to meet him in the parlor. She perched on an armchair cradling a steaming mug of chamomile, her demeanor as composed as if entertaining a casual drop-in. The moment Darius caught sight of her, his expression softened. He hurried forward, aiming to claim the spot beside her. But her frosty look halted him mid-step. Resigned, he settled into the chair across from hers. Launching into his act, he infused his words with regret and sorrow. "Aaliyah, forgive me. These past days I've reflected deeply. I admit I'm the villain who let you down. It was all that sly Simone Harov. She ensnared me completely. After all, we shared so many years together. Won't you offer me an opportunity to make things right?" Aaliyah took a measured sip, observing his display wordlessly. Met with silence, Darius shifted tactics. I caught your showcase yesterday evening. You're astonishing, Aaliyah. Never did I realize you were Phoenix Thread. The effort you poured in must have been immense. And you hid it from me, too. Had I understood your brilliance and dedication, I'd have cherished you properly. He started warping the facts. Your wealth, your label, they developed during our union, didn't they? Legally, that qualifies as shared assets. Aaliyah, let's scrap the divorce, all right? For the sake of our history, drop the filing. Moving forward, I'll stand with you. I'll assist in running the business. Boost your professional path. United, we can forge a mighty legacy. At that, his facade crumbled, revealing the depths of his avarice. Not sorrow, not affection, but an insatiable hunger for her vast wealth. Aaliyah placed her mug softly on the side table. The faint clink startled Darius. Lifting her gaze, she met his squarely for the first time since his arrival, her eyes piercing and unyielding, as if dissecting his very essence. Darius, have you said your piece? She uttered deliberately, each syllable precise. Rising, she crossed to her workspace and retrieved a thick file. To begin, Phoenix Thread was trademarked and the firm established solely by me, prior to our wedding. It remains my sole possession. Next, throughout our marriage, every cent from the enterprise flowed into an isolated account overseen by a neutral trustee. My attorney holds every record verifying the fund's origins and isolation. It bears no connection to your notion of joint holdings. Finally, regarding the divorce filing, I have no intention of rescinding it. Each declaration struck like a hammer against Darius's schemes. He'd never anticipated her thoroughness, her airtight defenses that left him no room to maneuver. Aaliyah strode to the entryway and beckoned the maid. Please show this visitor out and bar him from returning. Darius froze in the center of the space, fixated on Aaliyah's unyielding silhouette as she departed. The brazen mask on his face shattered into genuine alarm and defeat. He grasped that he'd forfeited everything. Several days following her discussion with Quincy Davis, as Aaliyah Thurston immersed herself in designs for the Pinnacle Art Center initiative, the maid approached with a hesitant air. Miss Aaliyah, Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Darius Sterling's mother, waits at the entrance and requests an audience. Aaliyah halted briefly, though her hand remained steady on the pencil. She'd foreseen this moment's arrival, considering her ex-mother-in-law's temperament, particularly now that her role as Phoenix Thread stood revealed. Staying silent was out of the question. She set aside the pencil. Invite her inside, she replied evenly. The maid appeared taken aback, but complied. Aaliyah aimed to resolve every loose end definitively. Mrs. Sterling was ushered into the parlor, in stark opposition to her haughty and domineering demeanor during that recent phone call. She appeared completely broken today. Her silver locks disheveled, her eyes puffy, her outfit rumpled. The moment she spotted Aaliyah, she hurried over, tears starting to pool in her gaze. Aaliyah, it wasn't my fault. I messed up. She reached out to clasp Aaliyah's hand, but Aaliyah deftly pulled away, dodging the gesture. Mrs. Sterling ended up with her arm dangling awkwardly in midair, then hastily dabbed at her eyes to launch into her theatrical plea. My dear, I made a terrible error. I'm getting on in years and can't tell good from bad anymore. These past few days I haven't eaten or rested at all. Guilt is eating me alive. I've come here to plead for your mercy. Aaliyah settled quietly onto a couch, gesturing for the elderly lady to take the facing chair, keeping a deliberate space between them. She remained silent, observing how much further the act would extend. When Aaliyah showed no response, Mrs. Sterling ramped up her theatrics. She started pinning the blame squarely on Simone Harrove. It's all because of that vixen. She lured my Darius in. My boy has always been decent, devoted to his spouse. That witch ensnared him, leveraging the baby to bind him. That's what led to his slip-up with you, my child. You're the finest partner the Sterling clan could hope for. Gorgeous, compassionate, and incredibly skilled. I let you down. My son let you down. She sobbed deeply before shifting to supplication. Aaliyah, for the sake of this aging lady, for all those years of wedlock, pardon him just this time. Which husband avoids errors? If you return, I swear I'll boot that woman and her kid out of the home right away. I'll force Darius to get on his knees and seek your pardon. To drive her point home harder, she didn't shy away from slandering the very child she'd once dubbed her grandkid. I never desired that illegitimate brat. Heaven knows if he's truly Darius's or from another man. I'll never acknowledge him as a Sterling heir. You're our sole daughter-in-law. At those words, Aaliyah's composure cracked, not from sympathy, but from profound revulsion. This woman's brazen deceit surpassed anything Aaliyah had envisioned. She lifted her head, locking eyes with Mrs. Sterling's tear-streaked, insincere stare. "Mrs. Sterling, has your show concluded?" she asked in an icy, detached tone. The formal Mrs. halted Mrs. Sterling's feigned warmth in its tracks, signaling an unbridgeable divide. Aaliyah pressed on without a flicker of feeling. "Earlier, you were the one phoning me, urging me to show leniency toward your son and grandson for the family's harmony. Now you're perched here, maligning them as a tramp and a bastard. Isn't that flip-flopping absurd and laughable?" Mrs. Sterling's complexion drained, leaving her speechless. Aaliyah rose, her expression turned utterly frosty. "My bond with Darius Sterling is finished. I won't retract the divorce filing, and I'm not tempted to rejoin your scheming household. I request that you leave me alone from here on out." She addressed the maid. "Mrs. Carmen, kindly escort the visitor to the door." Mrs. Sterling froze in shock, unable to accept such a degrading send-off. She attempted to object, but Aaliyah's resolute chill silenced her. She realized reversal was impossible. The maid drew near, polite yet resolute. "Mrs. Sterling, if you'll follow me." Mrs. Sterling lurched upright and trailed her to the entrance, utterly shamed. The grand house's portal closed with a resounding thud behind her, punctuating the end of her futile dreams. Ever since his banishment from Aaliyah's estate, Darius Sterling transformed into a shell of himself. Gone was the assured swagger of the thriving designer, along with any pretense of doting spouse or ideal parent. He holed up in his study for hours amid stacks of scattered papers. Yet these weren't design plans. They consisted of dossiers he'd gathered on the Phoenix Thread label, Aaliyah's Properties, and attorney Camille Dixon. The deeper he delved, the more hopeless he grew. It all formed an unassailable bastion, seamless and ironclad. Frustration morphed into short-tempered outbursts, which he unleashed on his surroundings. The infant Malik's wails grated on him. Simone's meals repulsed him. The flat, formerly a badge of his achievements, now resembled a stifling prison. Simone naturally sensed the shift. Darius's warmth and care had evaporated, supplanted by sharp rebukes and aloofness. Anxiety gripped her. Her vision of ascending as Mrs. Sterling, matriarch of affluence, receded further. She recognized the need to secure her place. That evening, once Malik was tucked in, Simone slipped into a alluring satin slip, decanted some crimson wine, and slipped into the study. "Darling, you shouldn't burn the midnight oil like this. It'll wear you down." Darius kept his focus downward, merely mumbling. Simone placed the goblet on the table, encircled his shoulders from the rear, and murmured. Darius snapped, "Listen, the split from her is nearly finalized. Why don't we scout some venues for our ceremony this weekend? My father's been inquiring about it as well. He insists on hosting a lavish affair for me." The mention of a wedding ignited an explosive fury within Darius, like a spark hitting dry tinder. He brusquely shoved her hands aside and leaped to his feet, his gaze inflamed with rage. "Wedding? Have you lost your mind? How could you even consider something like that right now?" Simone recoiled in shock, her expression shifting to indignation. And what's wrong with that? My boy and I deserve some formal acknowledgement, right? Or are you planning to leave us in this unofficial limbo indefinitely? Darius unleashed a harsh, mocking chuckle laced with bitterness. Acknowledgement, that's all you care about. Status. Do you realize what we forfeited? A massive fortune, a luxurious existence we could have savored endlessly. And it's because of you. Without you and that kid, we wouldn't be in this mess. Simone froze, her eyes brimming with tears. My fault, Darius. How dare you? Me, the one in Chicago who professed undying devotion, who vowed he'd had enough of his foolish spouse, and now you're dumping everything on my shoulders. For the first time, their quarrel boiled over, hurling pent-up resentments, schemes, and self-serving motives at one another. I'd known how wealthy she was. Insane to abandon her for someone like you, Darius bellowed. You act like I can't see through your regrets, she shot back. You lament not holding on to that treasure trove. You loathe me because I can't match the perks she provided. Darius Sterling, you're just a fortune hunter at heart. Crash. Darius swiped the wineglass from the table. It exploded against the ground, crimson liquid splattering across the cream-colored rug like gruesome marks. The air in the room grew frigid. They glared at each other with raw animosity, resembling complete unknowns. The bond forged from deceit and scheming had revealed its initial profound, unfixable fracture. No longer partners in crime, they were now two egotists scrambling to safeguard their own agendas aboard a crumbling vessel. Amid the external turmoil, Aaliyah Thurston remained utterly unperturbed. Once she'd cleared out the bothersome intruders, she poured her full focus and vigor into her endeavors. The Pinnacle Art Center initiative required vast innovation and resources, yet that only fueled her enthusiasm. Beyond this venture, though, Aaliyah nursed a separate ambition, rooted in her passion for embroidery craftsmanship. During a session with the Phoenix Thread Executive Group, she unveiled the fresh endeavor. The conference room's display projected visuals of an ancient settlement by a waterway, featuring rooftops blanketed in moss and walls weathered to a pale hue. It exuded tranquility, yet hinted at neglect. This is Blue Ridge Threadworks, nestled in the North Carolina mountains, Aaliyah declared with a firm, fervent tone. It used to stand as a premier hub for silk and manual embroidery nationwide. But as factories took over, the tradition faded away. Today, just a handful of aging experts persist, holding onto their skills while struggling to survive. She halted, scanning each attendee. Phoenix Thread thrives because of that timeless embroidery heritage. We can't simply take without contributing in return. So I've resolved that we'll channel this year's entire earnings into the Phoenix Rising Heritage Project. The group absorbed her words in quiet attention. We'll revive the Blue Ridge Threadworks Village, fix up the facilities, upgrade the tools, bring in veteran craftsmen for instruction, and offer no-cost workshops for younger talents. We'll transform it into more than a specialized manufacturing site, into a sanctuary for cultural safeguarding and immersive visitor experiences. We'll usher silk embroidery back to its peak era. Aaliyah's vision stemmed from genuine conviction, not commerce. She yearned to wield her influence in preserving fading cultural treasures. Soon after, news of the initiative buzzed through outlets. Bolstered by Phoenix Thread's reputation, the Phoenix Rising Heritage Project garnered widespread endorsement from communities and regional authorities. Observers hailed it as a vital step showcasing corporate civic duty. The prestige of Phoenix Thread and Aaliyah Thurston soared even higher among the masses. Unbeknownst to her, this heartfelt gesture would unwittingly deliver a devastating strike against Darius and Simone's schemes. Meanwhile, in a building firm's headquarters, Simone's dad, Mr. Hargrove, slammed his fist on the surface in outrage. That Aaliyah Thurston! Darius, ashen-faced, occupied the seat opposite. The finance periodical lay spread to the lead story on Phoenix Thread's undertaking. Do you grasp the location of that Threadworks village? Mr. Hargrove snarled. "It's smack beside the plot we shelled out a fortune to ready for seizure and acquisition." The authorities have now greenlit her initiative to safeguard the cultural site, deeming it a safeguarded landmark. Our plans to seize the property are in tatters. The whole upfront funding faces the danger of vanishing entirely. A shiver coursed through Darius's body. That resort development stood as a monumental endeavor, his chance to revive his professional standing following a string of setbacks. He'd poured every ounce of his drive and connections into it. Simone, present in the room as well, faltered in her words. "Father, perhaps it's merely chance." Chance. Her dad let out a harsh, mocking chuckle. "How innocent you remain. Such things don't happen by accident in our reality. That lady is obviously targeting us. She's intent on sealing every possible exit." Darius gripped his hands into tight balls, the cords bulging along the backs. He refused to accept it as mere luck. He was convinced it formed a meticulously orchestrated payback from Aaliyah. She sought more than just the split and her share of the wealth. Her aim was to shatter his livelihood and prospects utterly. Dread and animosity merged, spawning a poisonous delusion. He eyed Simone with distrust. Had she been aware of this scheme earlier? I have no clue," Simone stuttered. "She's played a ruthless hand," Darius bellowed. "We're utterly powerless against her." Meanwhile, in her atelier, Aaliyah was carefully sketching the foundational outlines for the upcoming Blue Ridge Threadworks community. She remained oblivious that a gesture driven by her passion had unwittingly driven her betrayers toward the edge of ruin. This uncalculated step proved the sharpest maneuver of them all. When troubles mount, they cascade relentlessly. No proverb rang more accurate for Darius right then. As he and Simone's kin scrambled for an escape from their blocked resort venture, yet another shock detonated, erasing their final prospects. The International Business Center initiative in Chicago, the structural marvel that had been his crowning achievement, the very project that had launched him to prominence, now drowned in a colossal controversy. It kicked off with a nameless entry on an architect's discussion board, paired with thorough video breakdowns and photos. The entry claimed the freshly finished tower already displayed deep fissures in its load-bearing supports and base. The writer, presenting as an ethical structural expert, highlighted that the employed substances, particularly the metal and cement, fell drastically short of required norms. In essence, outright fraud. The report, starting within expert networks, ballooned into a public frenzy via online platforms. Prominent outlets seized the tale. The vision of the shining high-rise, Chicago's symbol of progress, now linked to alarming labels. Substandard work, brittle facade tower, ticking disaster. Officials launched probes into the builder and Mr. Hargrove's firm at once, freezing the entire operation. As lead designer, overseeing the blueprint and oversight, Darius drew the brunt of the backlash. The prestige he'd labored years to amass crumbled in a flash. His cell buzzed endlessly. Inquiries from reporters, associates pulling out of deals, buyers of units in the structure insisting on refunds. He slumped in his workspace, gaze vacant on the glaring news blasts across his monitor. "Unthinkable! Unthinkable," he whispered. "I devoted endless hours to that blueprint, countless evenings overseeing the construction. How on earth did this occur?" Right then, Mr. Hargrove rang. His tone crackled like a furious injured animal. "Darius, you idiot! What sort of blueprint led to this mess? You've doomed us all." Darius, snapping to, shouted in return. "This isn't on me. My blueprint's flawless. Blame lies with your outfit. You probably substituted components to skim profits. Spare me the excuses." The man on the line snorted derisively. "All followed your blueprints exactly. As head designer, the buck stops with you." The pact forged on mutual gain shattered irreparably. They hurled accusations wildly, desperate to emerge from the quagmire. Once the call ended, Darius heaved for breath, shaking uncontrollably. He sensed himself trapped, engulfed in unrelenting gloom. Amid the chaos and hopelessness, one figure dominated his thoughts. Aaliyah Thurston. It had to be her doing. A venomous obsession gripped him. The sequence felt impossibly precise. First the resort site, now the Chicago structure. Every endeavor tied to him was unraveling. Pure chance was out of the question. She must have enlisted investigators to probe his vulnerabilities, expose flaws, and feed the details to the press to demolish him. Her vengeance burned fierce. The separation alone wouldn't suffice. She craved the obliteration of his entire world, hauling him through the filth where he'd stay buried. That notion slithered like a deadly serpent, tightening around his core. He viewed Aaliyah no longer as a wronged former spouse, but as a lethal foe. A cunning, nightmarish figure, pulling levers from the obscurity. His features twisted, distorted, fueled by deep resentment and utter terror. Darius's existence was consumed by chaos, while Aaliyah's days unfolded with unexpected serenity. She poured the bulk of her efforts into her design workshop, or explored bookstores and galleries, hunting for ideas and resources for the Pinnacle Art Center initiative. That day, she made her way to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. It was a spot she dreaded visiting, yet duty called her there. Mr. Solomon, the seasoned expert in silk stitching and her initial guide, had been hospitalized following a minor stroke. After stopping by his room to talk and confirm he was recovering, Aaliyah departed. As she headed toward the lift, she walked by the children's section. She planned to keep moving ahead, but the heartbroken sobs of a young one halted her steps without thought. In the lounge opposite a treatment area, a recognizable silhouette drew her eye. It was Simone Hargrove. Gone was the striking allure from their initial meeting. She sported plain, threadbare attire, with disheveled locks. Her bare-faced complexion appeared ashen and drained. Cradled in her embrace was young Malik. The child wailed uncontrollably, his cheeks red from fever. Simone seemed utterly bewildered and anguished, swaying the boy while fixating on the clinic entrance. Aaliyah lingered in a secluded spot, observing. A tangled, elusive emotion surged through her. There was no satisfaction or delight in witnessing her adversary's plight. Observing Simone grapple with her ill offspring, Aaliyah's view shifted, no longer the despised other woman, but a helpless, anxious parent. And that little one bore no blame. His tears held no deceit or scheme. They were just the raw ache of a tiny frame. He shouldn't bear the fallout from grown-up errors. A sharp twinge of sorrow pierced her. She wasn't flawless. Forgiveness for their betrayals eluded her. Yet right then, as the infant screamed in distress, hatred evaporated. What filled her was untainted empathy, rising above any lingering bitterness. She had no plans to draw near. She watched from afar before pivoting to go. Such issues were behind her now. Just as she spun around, she collided with another. "Pardon me," she murmured quickly, glancing upward. The individual before her caught her off guard a bit. It was Quincy Davis. He mirrored her astonishment, but soon offered a polite grin. "Miss Thurston, what an unexpected meeting." Aaliyah gave a faint nod. "Hello, Mr. Davis. I stopped by to see a colleague of my father's," he clarified succinctly. Then his sharp eyes settled on her features. "You appear in good spirits, not quite your usual self." He avoided glancing toward Simone's position. His focus stayed on Aaliyah. That tact eased her. She shook her head, attempting a grin. Just echoes of the past. Quincy probed no deeper. He recognized boundaries. Instead, he gazed intently and uttered something off-topic at first glance. Creativity thrives on fresh sparks. Don't allow shadows from old times to dim it. His remark carried real weight, like counsel from a fellow soul who grasped her essence. He viewed her not as a spouse in marital strife, but as a creator whose imaginative realm deserved safeguarding. A gentle warmth flowed into Aaliyah's core. It had been ages since anyone connected with her so profoundly. "Thank you," she replied. Now her expression held genuine warmth. She bid him farewell and proceeded to the elevator. Visions of the sobbing toddler and weary parent lingered. Yet Quincy's insight acted like a soothing gust, easing away the gloom and restoring her equilibrium. Her focus remained on artistry and invention. Past burdens needed releasing. The Chicago controversy and the frozen resort endeavor had driven Darius to desperation. Still, he clung to a final strategy. During the split, he'd argue that portions of Aaliyah's wealth built up while wed, grabbing funds for a fresh start. Unbeknownst to him, a real catastrophe brewed undetected, poised to obliterate it all. Within Camille Dixon's legal suite, the air crackled with intense pressure. Her squad comprised not just skilled attorneys, but elite sleuths in finance and accounting forensics. At first, their aim was basic: compile proof of unfaithfulness and map Aaliyah's holdings to shield them in the separation. But probing Darius's earnings for asset splits, a specialist uncovered something odd. The junior finance whiz highlighted an intricate fund trail on the large display. "Camille, check this out. Here's the standard pay and perks Darius Sterling earned from the Chicago venture. Impressive, yet justifiable. But following deals tied to Mr. Hargrove's building firm, we spotted irregular outlays." She enlarged a cluster of transfers. A substantial portion of the project's funds had been funneled to various suppliers of building materials. What raised red flags was that these firms had been established just prior to the initiative's launch. They lacked any prior operational record, and their listed addresses were suspiciously unclear. Camille squinted, her gut feeling as a seasoned investigator kicking in right away. She sensed foul play. "Keep going," the specialist affirmed with a nod. Once the funds arrived, these dummy entities funneled nearly the entire sum, minus a tiny cut, to scores of individual bank accounts via a series of minor transfers designed to dodge detection. Tracing those funds demanded considerable effort from us. She hesitated, drew in a steadying breath, and indicated a specific entry on the display. Ultimately, a significant chunk of those resources landed in an overseas bank account. The owner of that account, Darius Sterling. Silence enveloped the room. The gravity of the situation hit everyone hard. This wasn't merely a straightforward marital dissolution anymore. It pointed to a web of coordinated financial wrongdoing: fraud, fund diversion, laundering operations. Any single charge could land Darius and Mr. Hargrove behind bars. Suddenly, the pieces fell into sharp focus. Darius's rapid ascent in his field, his opulent existence in Chicago. These weren't solely the fruits of his architectural prowess, but were propped up by illicit gains. He wasn't simply a cheating spouse. He was a lawbreaker. Without delay, Camille dialed Aaliyah. She held back the revelations during the call, opting instead for a face-to-face discussion. In the opulent parlor of the grand estate, Aaliyah pored over the papers Camille passed to her, her expression growing increasingly icy with each page. She'd always recognized Darius's drive, his no-nonsense approach, his readiness to bend rules for advancement. But she'd never envisioned him abandoning all moral boundaries, disregarding professional standards and legal limits so brazenly. This deception cut deeper than his affair ever could. It didn't just taint their romance. It obliterated the core character of the man she'd once trusted without question. "Aaliyah," Camille stated gravely. "Armed with this proof, we don't just secure victory in the separation. We can pursue outright criminal charges. The choice rests with you." Aaliyah sat motionless for what felt like ages, her eyes drifting toward the window, where the dying sunlight cast fading glows. She wasn't one to push people into desperate corners, but this went beyond personal vendettas. It threatened the structural integrity of a major development, fair play, and legal order. Pivoting back to Camille, her resolve now steely, she declared, "Camille, Follow through with what's mandated by the rules. Those who err must face the consequences. It served as the ultimate blow, the decisive strike that would unravel everything for Darius Sterling. A fresh missive arrived at Darius from Camille Dixon's firm. Unlike previous notices of court appearances or property splits, this one carried a stern alert about questionable monetary dealings tied to the Chicago endeavor, including a fuzzy duplicate of certain wire instructions leading to the offshore holding in his name. While it stopped short of promising legal action, the implied menace was crystal clear. Spotting those amounts, Darius watched his reality crumble. Icy perspiration trickled along his spine. His fingers shook without control. This is the end, he realized. Aaliyah's aware of it all. She isn't after just the assets. She aims to see me locked up. Raw dread eclipsed any rational thought. He bolted from his workspace in a frenzy, hunting for Simone. He located her in the lounge, spooning yogurt to young Malik. Darius slammed the document down on the surface. The sudden clatter frightened the boy, who wailed immediately. "What's the meaning of this? Make it clear to me." Simone, caught off guard, soothed the toddler before snatching up the sheet. Upon recognizing the telltale numbers, her complexion drained of color. I have no idea," she muttered haltingly, eyes darting away. Darius's restraint snapped. He seized her arms and shook her, his voice rising to a near shout. "Stop the charade! How much longer will you deceive me? Aaliyah's onto us completely. She's got the full dossier. She's reporting everything. Prison awaits us. Get it." The mention of prison struck like a blade at Simone's deepest dread. Her facade of helplessness and innocence cracked wide open. Sobs racked her body. But on this occasion, they stemmed from genuine horror, not pretense. She crumpled to the floor, quaking, and admitted, "It was my dad's scheme. He claimed the undertaking required quick cash flow, that it amounted to just a short-term advance we'd repay down the line." Darius unleashed a wild, unhinged chuckle. An advance. Routing cash through fake outfits to foreign havens as some kind of advance. And why route it to my account? Because you lead the design team? Simone wept. Linking it to you would cover certain outlays. Dad insisted it was more secure that way. I acted only for us. With eyes brimming and streaming, she raised her face, seeking to stir his affection. I dreamed of a stable tomorrow for us, of providing Malik with the finest opportunities. I viewed that cash as belonging to our household. Once we're wed, what's mine becomes yours as well, doesn't it? Rather than easing his turmoil, her plea doused him like icy rain. He let go of her, retreating a step, gazing at her as though seeing her anew. Darius suddenly saw all the scattered fragments align in his mind, assembling into a horrifying whole. Her sudden arrival in Chicago, her flawless empathy and warmth, her unwavering devotion. It had all been a carefully orchestrated illusion. He wasn't the man she cherished. He was merely an instrument, a prized asset, with his role as chief architect, his authority, and his finances being the real prizes for her and her father. The romance he'd romanticized, the rationale for his own disloyalty, proved to be a sham from the outset. A stabbing ache gripped Darius's chest. Breath escaped him. He'd forsaken a woman who genuinely cared for him. A serene existence, all for a mirage spun by his own delusions and these con artists. He slumped onto the couch, his stare vacant. Everything was gone. His profession, his standing, his affection, and likely his liberty before long. The play in which he'd starred so prominently had reached its curtain call, leaving him to bear the heaviest toll. The flat plunged into an eerie hush following the clash. The infant Malik's wails had ceased. Simone held him close in the sleeping area, her quiet whimpers drifting out now and then. Darius stayed rooted to the couch, his eyes fixed on the faded crimson splotch of wine on the rug. He sensed himself as a vessel gradually descending into the sea's abyss. enveloped solely by icy void. His job, his esteem, his wealth, all evaporating from his grasp. And the so-called romance and fresh family he'd invoked to excuse his infidelity now stood exposed as an outright swindle. He amounted to nothing more than a piece on the board, a means to an end. Simone emerged from the room. Her lids were puffy, yet she'd regained some composure. She understood that confrontation would ruin everything now. Her sole chance to keep him was to project fragility, deploying her final ploy. She settled beside him, her tone frail and gentle. "Darling, forgive me. I lost my temper before and uttered words I regret. Please don't dwell on them. Arguing won't help us now. We need to tackle this as a team, don't we?" Darius offered no reply. Simone pressed on, resting her palm over his, which felt frozen. "Whatever lies ahead, Malik remains ours. He's so young and requires us both. For his sake, can we push forward united?" The mention of son caused Darius's lashes to flutter. He pivoted gradually to regard the woman at his side. Her features retained their allure, but to him they now mirrored only vile treachery. Each syllable she uttered carried an agenda. He withdrew his hand, his tone rasped, laced with frost. "Is it truly me you care for, or merely the chief architect role I hold?" Simone stiffened, feigning hurt. "What on earth do you mean? I love you, obviously." Darius emitted a harsh chuckle, his grin more mournful than tears. "Is it me? Or the benefits you'd gain for your father and yourself?" The disdain in his eyes shattered Simone's final restraint. She could no longer feign. Panic and fury surged, spilling forth as raw, poisonous barbs. "So what if I do love you? And what if I don't? Darius Sterling, take a good look at your situation. What's left for you? Your job's finished, you're broke, and prison's knocking. Do you honestly believe you're worthy of anyone's love anymore?" The dispute reignited, fiercer than before. The most savage retorts flew between them. "Had I foreseen this, I'd never have entangled myself with someone like you," Darius bellowed. "You wish you hadn't, right?" She shrieked, her visage twisted in wrath. "Think I enjoyed it, putting up with a man like you, and worse, bearing your child on top of it." In the peak of her rage, Simone let slip a remark she'd rue eternally, an offhand remark that struck at Darius's sole remaining fragility. She sneered with bitter mockery. "Without this kid, do you imagine you'd mean anything to us?" It was as if a thunderstrike jolted Darius. The chaos around him halted. The shouts, the sobs, the crash of shattered items, all faded. Within his thoughts, only Simone's final words echoed. "Without this kid, do you imagine you'd mean anything to us?" Worth as a utility? The boy. A dreadful doubt, an idea he'd never entertained, burgeoned in his psyche like some beast. He rotated deliberately. His eyes held no fury now, just an icy dread. He directed his stare to the bedroom where Malik slept, the boy he'd proclaimed proudly to all, his offspring, the one sharing his surname, his successor. Did the resemblance truly exist, or was it mere fancy? Simone, noting his look, experienced a chilling foreboding. She grasped her error and sought to mend it. "No, that's not what I intended. I was furious and spoke rashly." But Darius tuned her out. He rose wordlessly, entered his study, and secured the door. That evening, as Simone and the boy slumbered, he slipped quietly into the sleeping quarters. He regarded the child not through a parent's gaze. With investigators in mind, he meticulously gathered several delicate strands from the boy's pillow and enclosed them in a fresh sheet of tissue paper. Next, he extracted a single strand from his own head. Clutching both specimens in his grip, his pulse raced wildly. He needed to uncover the reality, no matter the price. This final revelation demanded answers. The ensuing days dragged on in a nightmarish haze. Darius and Simone shared not a single syllable. He drifted through the home like a specter, as she dwelled in dread, too afraid to inquire about his actions that evening. Darius devoted hours to the screen, not to labor, but to obsessively checking his private inbox. He lingered in suspense, anticipating the ultimate judgment on his shattered existence. Through an unidentified delivery service, he had dispatched the pair of hair specimens to a renowned DNA analysis lab. They assured delivery of outcomes within 3 working days via electronic mail. Each moment of anticipation felt like agony. Sleep evaded him entirely. His frame thinned noticeably. His facial hair sprouted wildly. He appeared a decade older. From time to time, he found himself gazing at Malik in play without realizing it. He searched the youngster's features for any hint of resemblance, a feature echoing his own. Yet the closer he observed, the more alien the boy appeared. That grin, those eyes, none bore his likeness. On the third day's late hours, while he sat lost in thought, an alert for a fresh message popped up on the display. His heartbeat halted. From Center for Forensic Genetics, title, DNA Examination Outcomes, reference Ya File Identifier. His fingers shook as he guided the cursor to the message. Drawing a steadying inhale, summoning every ounce of resolve, he selected it. An attached document in PDF format awaited. He launched it. The document laid out the findings in a detached, clinical format. Rows of genetic indicators, intricate jargon beyond his grasp. Yet comprehension eluded necessity. His focus locked onto the closing summary, highlighted in bold and boxed clearly. Evaluation and determination. From examining 24 STR genetic loci, the match between the presumed parent sample, Darius Sterling, and the child sample, Malik Hargrove, reveals mismatches across 15 sites. Per protocols in genetic profiling, the outcome stands as follows. No biological link exists between the presumed parent and the child as father and son. No paternal connection biologically. Those stark phrases struck Darius like a sledgehammer to the skull. In that moment, his reality fractured. Ambient noises faded away. The TV's murmur from the lounge and Malik's chuckles vanished from his ears. Only the frantic thump within his ribcage echoed. He had forfeited his profession, his standing, his wealth. The woman who cherished him deeply had slipped away. And now, the sole anchor remained. The joy of fathering an heir to carry his name had vanished too. It proved a cruel illusion, a flawless deception where he served as both dupe and unwitting extra. Deceit had stripped him not just of funds and affection, but forced him to nurture a stranger's offspring. That degradation cut deeper than parting from Aliyah, eclipsed the dread of imprisonment. A hoarse, icy chuckle escaped his lips. It escalated into unrestrained, frenzied guffaws. He mocked his folly, the audacity of his betrayers, his wretched fate. Salty trails ran down his cheeks, blending with the manic mirth. He pressed his face against the keys, his sturdy frame convulsing fiercely. Once perched at the pinnacle, possessing it all, a single flawed choice, fueled by avarice and ego, had unraveled his world through his own actions. And now, emptiness reigned, utter void. Darius Sterling's downfall accelerated beyond prediction. In the wake of the paternity bombshell, he transformed into a hollow husk. Disputes and outbursts ceased. With chilling quietude rather than fury, he evicted Simone and the boy from the residence. Everything had slipped from his hold. The design company dismissed him to sidestep complications. Old associates shunned him. Companions steered clear. His finances stood seized. A torrent of legal actions from the builder and patrons loomed. The upscale residence faced imminent seizure by the lender. From a skilled builder at his zenith, he tumbled into the void without cushion. During his bleakest, most forsaken moments, when spirits or smokes offered no solace for his torment, one vision surfaced: Aliyah's Not the current version, the radiant, distant force of Phoenix, but the bygone Aaliyah, the tender, empathetic partner who stood steadfast through his trials. She represented his final tether. Rallying his dwindling energy, he motored to her estate. Gone were the bespoke attire. Instead, a creased threadbare top, unkempt trousers, stubble from days past, disheveled locks, and hollow reddened gaze. He resembled a vagrant. Even the entrance eluded him. The watchman eyed him with disdain and barred entry. Forced to linger across the roadway, he lingered quietly outside, yearning for a glimpse of her. From dawn until dusk, he stayed put. As the lamps along the avenue flickered to life, the sleek black Bentley at last appeared. When it pulled up to the entrance, he hurried over. Aaliyah Thurston was emerging from the vehicle. Spotting Darius in his disheveled condition, she registered no shock, as though she'd anticipated his presence. Her expression remained steady, utterly unchanged. The driver and bodyguard moved to step in. Yet Aaliyah gave a subtle shake of her head. She gestured for them to hold back and fixed her eyes on the figure before her. "What is it you seek from me?" Her tone carried a remote chill, like addressing an utter unknown. That remoteness shattered Darius's final shred of self-respect. He gazed at her, as poised and refined as ever, then caught his own ragged image in the Bentley's polished surface. The stark difference crushed him utterly. Words failed him. Instead, he lowered himself gradually and intentionally onto one knee, right there on the opulent boulevard, bathed in the warm glow of the lamps. The once unyielding symbol of arrogance now yielded for the first time. Tears streamed down his cheeks, genuine ones now, from a man fully broken. "Aaliyah, forgive me," he managed, his words fractured by heaving sobs. "I realize it's too late, but I was deeply mistaken." He poured it all out, how Simone and her father had manipulated him, the shady transactions, his foolish trust in a fabricated romance. And at last, he revealed the deepest wound and shame, the boy. "That child isn't mine. I've been caring for someone else's kid all this time. Aaliyah, I've been such a fool, a total joke." He lifted his tear-streaked face toward her, eyes brimming with raw desperation, resembling a cornered animal pleading for compassion. "I've forfeited it all. My job, my standing, my circle, everything. Prison awaits me. Aaliyah, I'm not seeking absolution. Just recall our shared years as spouses. Aid me this once. Only this once. Rescue me." His entreaty hung in the quiet air, feeble and heartbreaking. He'd cast aside every ounce of honor, grasping at the faint possibility of aid from the wife he'd callously deserted long ago. Aaliyah Thurston remained still, absorbing each admission and supplication from Darius. A soft evening breeze rustled her attire. In her gaze, there was no triumph of the triumphant or sympathy for the fallen. No lingering resentment, just a profound serenity, akin to a pond's still waters post-tempest, smooth and unrippled. The man prostrate before her had once defined her existence, but now he meant little more than a sorrowful outsider, a dim echo from the past. She replied deliberately, her words crisp and icy, stripped of any warmth. "Rise, Darius." A spark of optimism lit his eyes. "Aaliyah, you—" But her following remark extinguished it entirely. "Your ruin isn't my handiwork. Revenge was never my aim." She met his stare squarely, her speech precise and unwavering. "All this torment stems from your avarice and choices alone. You opted for disloyalty. You pursued the unlawful route. You embraced deception. You wrecked your own world. Own it. No one else to fault." Darius fell mute. Her statement wasn't a heated rebuke, but a stark, unsparing reality. She viewed him not even as an adversary deserving retribution. That detachment stung worse than any barrage of barbs. But our time as a couple, he faltered. That bond, Aaliyah replied gently, severed the instant you introduced another partner and her boy into our house. I won't assist you, nor will I sabotage you further. Leave it to the law. Errors demand accountability. That's equity. With that, she passed through the gateway. The sturdy metal barrier swung shut with a harsh scrape, severing the final link between them like a sharpened edge. Darius stayed on his knees amid the empty road, a lone, wretched silhouette. He understood the end had come for good. 7 days on, their divorce reached its concluding session. The courtroom air felt grave and frigid. No heated disputes or sobbing claims disrupted the flow. It all advanced swiftly and methodically. Aaliyah, the initiator, held herself upright, features serene, clad in a sophisticated taupe trouser ensemble. Darius, the one responding, appeared worn and vacant-eyed, like a marionette with severed cords. As the judge proclaimed the split approved on solid proof, Darius showed no response. Aaliyah took the decree from her attorney, inking the required papers with bold, resolute lines. Once done, she rose and departed the space alongside her counsel, sparing Darius not a single glance. The portal swung wide, spilling sunlight into the corridor. Aaliyah blinked against the glare and inhaled the crisp breeze deeply. Freedom enveloped her entirely. Darius's fate beyond that point. The penalties awaiting him held no relevance to her anymore. A vast expanse stretched ahead, ready for her to embrace. She unfurled her wings at last. Retribution might move at a glacial pace, yet it always arrives in due time. The downfall of Darius and the Hargrove clan served as the most vivid testament to this truth. Following the split, the dossier of fiscal misdeeds compiled by Camille Dixon's group was formally submitted to the officials, sparking a sweeping probe. The veil over their sordid schemes at last dropped away. Confronted by undeniable proof, Darius and Mr. Hargrove found themselves unable to point fingers. In unison, they had woven a web of phantom firms, forged agreements, and siphoned off massive sums from the Chicago Initiative. The media, which had previously lauded Darius, now turned its focus to exposing every wrongdoing linked to him and the Hargrove lineage. Their images splashed across headlines with lurid captions: "Genius architect or cunning fraudster. Hargrove building dynasty crumbles under avarice." In the courtroom, Darius shattered entirely. He confessed to every offense, too drained to contest the charges of fraud, fund washing, and violations of property zoning laws. His punishment stood as a stern example, consigning the prime of his existence to confinement. Mr. Hargrove, the chief architect of the plot, endured a parallel verdict. The firm he had nurtured over decades filed for insolvency, with its holdings confiscated to settle reparations. Simone Hargrove, though not hands-on in the offenses, couldn't evade accountability for her complicity, cover-ups, and profits. As the inquiry deepened, a far more explosive revelation emerged. Her actual paramour, Malik's real sire, turned out to be the firm's deputy head, already wed. It became clear that Simone and her partner had orchestrated the whole affair from the start. They exploited Darius's innocence and drive, molding him into an ideal scapegoat to mask their forbidden affair while using him as the instrument for their crooked ventures. The affection she claimed for Darius was nothing but a carefully staged illusion. Once the truth surfaced, her lover escaped abroad, abandoning her to the fallout. His affluent kin leveraged their wealth and clout to distance themselves, pinning full blame on Simone. Stripped of resources, her allure withered, and burdened by a suspended term plus crushing liabilities, Simone at last atoned for her plots and rapacity. Young Melik, with no guardians left, ended up in a welfare facility. On the other side, Mrs. Sterling, Darius's mother, upon hearing of her sole child's incarceration and the loss of her fortune, buckled under the strain. A devastating stroke struck, paralyzing half her form. dooming her remaining time to a sterile hospital ward tended by caregivers. Her vision of a grandson as successor and a wealthy bride to sustain her dissolved, replaced by anguish and remorse in that bleak space. All harvested the fruits of their actions. The vortex of cupidity, deceit, and falsehoods imploded at last, granting serenity to the blameless. Several months on, as the scandal's echoes faded, Aaliyah Thurston's world had fully realigned to its vibrant, tranquil rhythm. She no longer cared for updates on those figures. To her, they were now utter outsiders, remnants swept away by the breeze. She poured her efforts into her twin endeavors, the gallery at the Pinnacle Art Center and the revival of the Blue Ridge Threadworks Village. Guiding the Phoenix Rising Heritage Project, she achieved triumphs beyond expectation. The Silk Village emerged renewed from its ruins. Historic homes regained their timeless allure through careful refurbishment. Factories received updates. Ancient weaving machines hummed anew with the rhythm of shuttles. Aaliyah persuaded the village's remaining skilled craftspeople to remain, providing fair pay and a nurturing setup to transmit their fading arts. She launched no-cost workshops that drew in eager youth devoted to the trade. The site evolved not only into a prime hub for Phoenix thread production, but also a captivating spot for heritage tourism. Beyond financial gains, the initiative breathed vitality back into a tradition teetering on oblivion. Phoenix Thread's standing soared to fresh heights. More than mere opulence, it embodied ethics and profound humanity. The current Aaliyah had evolved utterly. Gone was the domestic figure bound to chores, or the guarded powerhouse ever on alert. She struck an ideal harmony in her career. She led with resolve, innovated as an artist. Beyond that realm, she reclaimed her essence. She savored moments with books, teas, and floral displays. She journeyed solo to remote locales, from the Rocky Mountains to Southern heritage hamlets, gathering sparks of creativity and nourishing her spirit. She embraced an unbound, abundant existence free of entanglements. She was not Lou. She wasn't searching for romance anymore, and solitude held no terror for her. She understood that genuine joy stemmed not from any partner, but from the inner satisfaction and serenity of her soul. She had discovered an improved self, more resilient and joyful than before. Fall in Charleston, South Carolina, unfolds like a delicate painting. The amber foliage of the ancient live oaks drifts gently over the aged patios. The curved arches mirror themselves in the calm pools. Aaliyah Thurston had arrived for a journey blending oversight of an artisanal initiative with a hunt for ideas for her upcoming line. Once her duties wrapped up, she indulged in a peaceful evening wandering the storied Battery, among the South's renowned seaside promenades. Draped in a flowing azure silk gown, her locks cascading freely, and clutching a vintage film camera, she sidestepped the throngs, opting for secluded trails where the subtle balance of buildings, greenery, and waves enveloped her. Pausing on a modest span to observe the vibrant swimmers in a basin, a cozy, recognizable tone emerged from behind. Unless I err, this is precisely how an authentic creator uncovers muses. A flicker of astonishment lit Aaliyah's gaze as she pivoted. Mere paces off, with a soft grin, stood Quincy Davis. Devoid of his corporate attire, he sported a pale gray blazer and relaxed trousers. He appeared far removed from the head of a vast enterprise, instead seeming affable and at ease. "Mr. Davis, such an unexpected meeting. Are you visiting Charleston as well?" Quincy drew nearer and rested against the balustrade next to her. "I've got a small adventure underway here. I drop by now and then to check progress and flee the frenzy of New York. Looks like our interests align." They exchanged no further words, merely gazing at the vista wordlessly. Yet it wasn't uncomfortable stillness. On the contrary, it felt like mutual appreciation and regard for personal boundaries. Shortly after, Quincy shattered the quiet. "That initiative of yours at Blue Ridge Village, I've caught wind of it. A profoundly impactful pursuit. You're not just a skilled creator. but someone with immense compassion. Aaliyah demurred with a shake of her head. I merely act on my convictions. Embroidery has bestowed so much upon me. It was time to give back to its origins. They set off ambling side by side along the meandering routes and trim lawns. Their exchange steered clear of commerce or hefty deals. Instead, they delved into the legacy of Gullah designs, the significance of those wrought iron fences and lines, and the way daylight and shade danced across the bay all day long. Quincy held a profound grasp of heritage and creativity. His insights always brimmed with novelty and intrigue. And Aaliyah, through her creator's lens, perceived the understated grace, the concealed sentiments in each nook that an ordinary eye might miss. They were like-minded souls, encountering empathy and harmony in one another, needing few utterances to connect. As they neared a chamber of woven hangings, Quincy halted before one portraying a lion, an eagle, and a stag, emblems of dignity and vigor. He turned to Aaliyah, his look profound and earnest. Encountering you now, I grasp the essence of grace truly. It arises not from haute couture or lavish baubles. It springs from the fortitude forged in turmoil, from the calm of releasing grudges. Miss Thurston, I hold you in profound esteem. His statements carried no superficial charm. They conveyed acknowledgement, a heartfelt regard. For the first time, a gentleman peered into her essence and valued her not as the affluent phoenix weaver, but as Aaliyah Thurston herself. A soft, tender warmth bloomed in Aaliyah's chest. She offered a subtle beam, one as luminous as the fall sunlight. Thank you, Mr. Davis. They avoided mentions of what lay ahead. No vows were uttered. It was simply an evening of joint exploration, exchanging views on aesthetics and existence. Yet in the serene ambiance of Charleston's grounds, a fragile glimmer, rooted in empathy and admiration, appeared to flicker to life. Aaliyah Thurston made her way back to her Greenwich Village residence one weekend evening. The amber hues of dusk poured through the expansive pane, bathing the area in glow. She brewed a vessel of jasmine brew, its fresh scent permeating the air. With the steaming mug cradled, she lingered at the glass, quietly surveying the urban panorama. The towering structures stood defiant. Vehicles surged without pause. New York pulsed with its usual energy and clamor. Yet the viewer's outlook had shifted entirely. In her thoughts, visions of Darius or Simone no longer lingered. Those figures, those chapters, had genuinely faded into history, akin to a dark dream that, while etching marks, inflicted no fresh hurt. She had mastered absolution, not for them, but for her own sake, to advance unburdened. A brief musing on that Charleston interlude, on the fellow with the piercing eyes and aligned essence, curved her mouth into a soft grin. It had been a lovely crossing of paths. It might happen someday, yet she harbored no expectations and felt no urgency. Her joy now stood on its own, independent of any partner at her side. She placed the cup aside and ascended to the third floor, entering her secluded workshop. The room remained perpetually orderly and serene. Aromas of fresh silk and sandalwood mingled, fostering a tranquil vibe that soothed her spirit. She moved toward a vacant stand, where a ready-made pearwood frame awaited. Opting against vibrant hues, she selected a sheet of flawless white silk, premium grade and as velvety as an infant's touch. Using her graceful, elongated fingers, she meticulously secured the material onto the frame. Each action displayed skill and intent. The pristine cloth stretched taut, free of any creases, akin to an untouched sheet ready for fresh tales. She settled into her seat and unlatched her thread case. Countless spools of silk in endless colors sat arranged precisely, gleaming beneath the illumination. She took her time selecting, instead quietly contemplating them as concepts and outlines emerged in her thoughts. What pattern would grace this cloth? Perhaps a soaring fire phoenix, emblem of her renewal, or a spotless white magnolia, representing serenity within. Maybe a grand vista of peaks and streams, evoking her liberation. She had no answer yet, nor did she require one right then. Her existence mirrored that unmarred surface now. The form and tint the days ahead would assume rested solely in her hands, her decisions. She picked up a reel of turquoise thread, hue of optimism and fresh starts. Deftly, she loaded it onto the silver needle. Bathed in the soft golden glow, Aaliyah bent ahead, posture upright, eyes intent. She drove the initial stitch into the immaculate white silk, one followed by the next, deliberate, steady, brimming with assurance. Through her skilled hands, she was weaving the weave of her destiny, a destiny radiant, unbound, and shaped by her will alone. Enjoyed the tale. And from which town are you tuning in? Share in the comments below. If the story resonated, show your backing with a super thanks. It helps me deliver more narratives like this. Grateful for your kind encouragement. Eager for your thoughts on it. Check the display for 2 fresh life tales I truly suggest. My channel holds plenty more. Remember to hit subscribe. Catch you in the upcoming story. Warm regards and appreciation.